Spiritual Awakening 101, guiding you to rise above limits, embrace divine wisdom, and discover the deeper power with your soul. Well, another week, another great episode with my legendary co host, Miss Carol.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Yes, and yes, and yes. So, how are you, Miss Carol?
I'm doing well, and it's been a great week.
A great week indeed. And today our topic will be trusting God through every season. Every season, people. Spring, winter, what else? Summer, fall.
Oh,
So, Miss Carol, trusting God. What do you think about it? Trusting God.
I, I do this. I used to not have as much trust and faith in God as I do, but it has deepened so much over these last few years, and I can't do anything but have that in my life.
Yes. People trusting God through every season speak to the discipline of faith that remains steady regardless of circumstances, whether life feels abundant or uncertain, joyful or painful. Just trust God because, well, God give you something else, give you something more blessings. It happened for a reason, as they said. So, Miss Carol, when we face a winter season, bareness, or waiting, or deep loss, what does trusting God look like if it doesn't feel like faith, but more like endurance or even despair? How do we trust when we can't see any signs of spring?
Well, trust is about staying the course rather than a passive wait. We must pray and meditate, which provides comfort and are means for us to remain connected to God during these winters. And they can be a long, hard winter. You don't have to suppress feelings of despair or doubt. If we struggle with our feelings of pain or despair, we bring and give our burdens to God because God can handle all of our darkness. We can trust when remembering past faithfulness, when God has shown up unexpectedly during or after our suffering. It provides hope and allows us to shift our pain to trust in God and question if part of our purpose is being revealed for soul's growth. Stillness is necessary during these times. Trust may feel difficult but necessary to get through a cold or sad winter.
Very well said, Miss Carol. Very well said. People trusting God in winter seasons often looks for less like a confident belief and far more like a quiet endurance. In this season, trust is not measured by emotional certainty or spiritual strength, but by the decision to remain present with God even the hope feels thin and answers are absent. Faith is just not a triumphant. It's a persistent. So, where there are no visible signs of springs, trusting God means allowing lament to consist with belief. Scriptures repeatedly affirms that crying out in pain, confusion, or even frustration is not a failure of faith. It is expression of relationship.
Yes.
So, Miss Carol, surprisingly, many people find it difficult to trust God in season of blessings and success. Why can abundance and ease sometimes feel like more challenging spiritual lessons than hardship? How do we cultivate gratitude and trust when everything is going right?
Well, it can mask our need for God with a false sense of self sufficiency where we mistakenly attribute our blessings to our own efforts rather than God's grace. Our ease of prosperity can lead us to the road of pride and spiritual apathy because we feel we are the reason for our success, which can lead to complacency and distracts us from our purpose. It feels like a full cup is harder to balance than an empty one. We should remain humble. It's tempting to place our security in money and possessions rather than in God. To remain spiritually vibrant when things are going well, reflect on the past and acknowledge God as our anchor and source of received gifts while practicing inner gratitude. Our talents and opportunities are expressions of His grace, not just your hard work. Spread abundance through service and helping others. Pause and thank God through stillness, allowing His voice to come through for you to become deeper in your faith.
Deeper in your faith. People, seasons of blessings and success can be spiritually challenging precisely because they reduce our sense of need. Hardship tends to drive people toward God out of desperation and dependence, while abundance can quietly replace reliance on God with confidence in self, systems, or circumstances. When life is going well, faith is less urgent. Prayer can become optional, and gratitude can slowly shift into entitlement. People abundance can often create the illusion of control. Success reinforce the belief that outcomes are primarily the results of personal effort, intelligence, or discipline. So, Miss Carol, a greater deal of life is living in between seasons. When nothing seems to be changing, what is the spiritual work of trust during the plateaus periods? How do we avoid mistaking God's silence for his absence?
Well, part of this is lessons through our spiritual work during all seasons. The in between allows for breakthrough and cultivates our soul growth, which activates a deeper trust. It's disciplined patience. These seasons of perceived stillness is not just spiritual absence, but times of quiet is growth, formation, leading to future movement. And it's not gaps in God's plan, but essential phases for maturing faith beyond emotions. Trust is paramount and requires resilience and endurance. Our work includes prayer, reading scripture, and allowing spiritual guidance to be received. We have to listen for it. Allow silence to be a sacred space. God's silence is often an invitation to a deeper rather than a sign of rejection. Allow God to shape us to follow Christ and become a beacon of light for others. And you might be tested to see if your faith can stand on your own. The perceived absence might be preparing you for something greater. That was my case. God is always with us. You are in a meaningful process of becoming. If you're at a plateau, it's often a sign that God is stirring something new within you.
Hmm. Yes, definitely within you, people, because in the in between seasons, the long plateaus where life feels repetitive, unresolved, or stale, or often where the deepest spiritual work of trust takes place. These periods of test faith not through crisis or abundance, but through monotony and uncertainty. Nothing obviously wrong, yet nothing is clearly moving forward. Trust there quieter, slower, and less emotional reinforce. Miss Carol, there's often a gap between knowing in our midst that God is trustworthy and feeling that trust in our hearts, especially in crisis. What is the practical ways to bridge that gap and move from intellectual assent to visceral reliance?
Well, bridging the gap between mental knowledge and heartfelt trust is a process of integration, moving truth through us. It involves practices of wisdom with understanding of how we process stress and connection. Sometimes our crisis triggers a flight or fight response. Truths can feel distant. Grounding helps make God's presence more tangible and real. Breath work helps as it calms the nervous system and internalizes the truth. Lean into faith when your heart feels empty. It can carry the trust for you. Share your struggles with mentors, which can break the isolation that feels like anxiety. Through small acts of obedience, trust can happen as an action. Through small acts of obedience, trust can happen. And even if you don't feel trust, choosing to act as if God is trustworthy can align your heart. Rather than feeling this must be done all the time, you should turn your attention to serving others, which can provide a sense of purpose. So do this throughout the day. Doesn't have to be all the time, but just do that.
Yes, do it, people, do it. And the gap between knowing that God is trustworthy and feeling that the trust is one of the most honest tension in spiritual life. Intellectual assent is often immediate, formed by belief, theology, and past learning, with a visceral reliance is slower, shaped by experience, vulnerability, and practice under pressure. Bridging that gap requires engaging not just the mind, but the body, habits, and emotions. So, Miss Carol, trusting God is not always a passive. How do we discern when trusting God means waiting patiently and when it means taking a courageous step forward into unknown? What's the relationship between trust and obedience?
Well, you listen to your intuition, and our higher selves are with us at all times. Trusting God involves waiting and taking action. Understand it's beyond passive and with expectations. So, discernment allows us to listen to know if a season requires stillness or action. Its decision feels excited or panic through uncontrolled emotion. It usually means to wait. We then wait for the next logical step. We plant seeds and wait for growth to happen. Take courageous steps when things feel spiritually aligned with God. It may take time to act, even if you're afraid. So, when circumstances and peace come together, trust as it can be a sign to move forward. Trust and obedience should be inseparable. Taking a small step forward through obedience builds trust, which causes internal trust to deepen.
Yes, people, trusting God is often misunderstood as a passive resignation, but biblically and spiritually, trust is an active or is active, discerning, and responsive. The tension between waiting and moving forward is not resolved by certainty but by obedience shaped through the attentiveness, wisdom, and character. Trust means waiting when action would be driven by fear, control, or impatience rather than clarity. Waiting is the appropriate when motives are unsettled, emotions are heightened, and when action would compromise integrity. In these moments, trust look like restraint, choosing not to force outcomes, manipulate timing, and create movement simply to escape discomfort. Waiting honors to believe that God's timing carries meaning, not just efficiency. So, Miss Carol, after trusting God, for someone whose trust has been deeply broken by people or painful life events, how does that would affect their ability to trust God, where they can begin to heal the foundational sense of trust?
Deeply broken trust makes it hard to trust God because pain makes us fear more hurt. And I've been through this. We question God's goodness or why we suffer. Healing starts with acknowledging pain, leaning into God through prayer, finding support in communities, and choosing faith over feelings. Remember, God understands our weaknesses. Talk to God about your doubts, worries, and anger. Past betrayal causes you to feel unprotected and scared, which leads to withdrawal. It's our human flawed behavior to question God's goodness when pain happens in our lives. Although it isn't, it can feel like punishment or questioning if God cares. The egoic mind struggles to reconcile God's promises when we experience pain, which causes faith to waver and us to pull away from God. Trust begins by acknowledging your pain and grief. Allow time to grieve losses and hurts. Releasing pain must be done to move forward. That's the part that I struggled with. Focus on God's steady nature and His mercy rather than your feelings or circumstances. It allows us to choose faith over fear. Treat your heart gently and place your reliance in God.
So, Miss Carol, beyond these crisis moments, what are the two simple daily practices or reminders that help ground you in trust, building spiritual resilience, or when harder seasons inevitably come?
Well, simple practices can include gratitude journaling to shift focus and mindful pauses to ground in the present. Trust by acknowledging small joys and finding calm in chaos. Serving others through small acts builds purpose and connection, reinforcing the belief that we're part of something bigger than our struggles. We should always have an attitude of gratitude. Also, grounding helps us focus on the controllable parts of our lives. Do what you can with what you have and where you're at. Remind yourself that difficult seasons are temporary and a part of a larger journey, giving us hope and perspective. We're never alone.
We never alone for sure. So how can intentionally remembering God's past faithfulness become a powerful tool for trusting him with our present uncertainty or future fears?
Recalling God's past faithfulness, it powerfully builds trust, providing tangible truth and proof of God's reliable character, shifting focus from fear and boosting faith and anchoring hope in God's unchanging nature, showing God's capable of handling current troubles and future unknowns because God has proven his goodness before to us. It reveals God's consistent help which strengthens our belief in God. Document the moments of God's goodness to recall in difficult times. Share your testimony, be thankful, and express gratitude.
Be thankful indeed. So, how does walking through a season within the faith community change the nature of our personal trust in God? Why is it often harder and more important to trust God together?
I believe in soul families, which has resulted in deep conversations involving faith with my spiritual community. Walking through seasons deepens trust through shared experience and support, which reveals God's faithfulness through other stories. Vulnerability is needed, and there will be differing views within the community. We're shown God's presence beyond our individual feelings. Often I feel strength in faith through relationships and vulnerability. Knowing others have similar beliefs, and that causes my faith to deepen.
Very well said, Miss Carol. Very well said. And to wrap up our discussion for today, in your view, is the ultimate purpose of learning to trust God through every season is simply to get us through them, or it does transform us into something different? What kind of character or spirit does this journey to trust produce over lifetime?
It does more than just help you. It's a life changing process that develops resilient character, patience, developing faith, and Christ like likeness as you rely on God's bigger plan rather than your own understanding. A person then becomes rooted in God's faithfulness. This journey builds unwavering hope, a deeper knowledge and relationship with God, and it creates spiritual strength. It allows you to find purpose through difficulties and become more aligned with His will. We endure, our weaknesses emerge, and through healing, we build a purer and stronger character. Strength remains even when we stumble. God's word and prayer builds confidence. We then make better decisions through deepened faith and unwavering trust. We surrender because we recognize God's wisdom is beyond ours. We surrender because we recognize God's wisdom is beyond ours. It leads to dependence on God for our life's direction and purpose. The journey of trust, it nurtures a spirit that is rooted in God's unchanging nature, not our circumstances. It allows for profound spiritual growth and Christ-like heart through unconditional love that embraces life seasons as a part of divine transformative work.
Divine transformative work, yes, indeed. So, the ultimate purpose of learning to trust God through every season is not merely survival or endurance, but transformation. Getting through the season is a secondary outcome. The deeper work is who we become because we have trusted God with them. If trust were only about coping, it's a goal we believe. But over lifetime, trust reshape identity. It moves person from reactivity to rootedness, from anxiety to steadiness, from control to surrender, and the season themselves become formative rather than merely circumstantial.
That's so
Well,
true.
Miss Carol, we have a great topic for today, don't you think?
I enjoyed this. There's so much that goes through people when they are in spiritual crisis. I have been there myself. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I, I, I had to trust fully in God. I didn't know what my outcome was going to be, but that strengthened my faith. And sometimes these crisis moments, that's exactly what it does. It will make or break you.
Yes, people trust God in everything because there's a purpose why God is doing that for you, for me, for everybody. So, Miss Carol, thank you so much for your time.
As always, it's a pleasure, Daniel.
Yes, so would you like to plug in something? Your book, please.
I'm the author of two books. One is My Twin Flame Journey Through Separation, Surrender, and Release, and the second one is Healing Sacred Wounds While Reclaiming My Power. A lot of spirituality parts are in this. And I also have beginning spirituality video blogs on my personal author page on Facebook, which is BC Pitt. They're short and hopefully to help you.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Carol or Miss Busy Pete because if you support her for sure, more and more empowering books will rise. So, Miss Carol, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
What can people see you soon?